Hello, Betsy Chasse. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm,
Good.
Here I am in my little patio world.
I'm here with you today, representing Project OneVoice, and we wanted to talk to you specifically today because it's the United Nations Make a Difference Day, and you're making a difference. And we wanted to talk to you specifically about, being the mother of a young teenage daughter and a young son and how that plays out. But before we dive into that, will you tell me a little bit about See Good TV and how See Good TV is making a difference in the world?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of the See Good TV team, which is available online and on your phone and on your TV through Roku or any of those apps. Our mission and the philosophy of our founder, Trina Wyatt, is that if you are what you eat, you are what you watch. And I would say now, as we all scroll through Facebook and all sorts of places, I can tell from experience, the more I see anger and depression and rage, the angry and depressed I get. So that we are what we watch is true. And See Good's mission is to create and curate content that will leave the viewer uplifted, inspired, informed, but also transformed, and not just from a level of, gee, I didn't know about that, I should do something, but on a cellular soul level transformed.
Yes, I love that, and I so relate to that, especially with what's transpired during the past couple months. I spent the first couple months of the pandemic with my parents in their house, and I love a good horror movie. I do, and so do my parents, and we love those crime detective shows. But I found myself a few months in, literally one night as we sat down to say, what program are we going to watch after dinner? I said, can we pick a comedy, please? Can we pick something light? Um,
Right.
because it does. It seeps into you on a cellular level. Even scripted television that is just there to entertain is still seeping into you on a cellular level, and how your energy is affected by that. I love that. I love that
Yeah.
you're involved with See Good TV, and I love the content that they're curating. So we appreciate that. We appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
part of the change to putting out good content. We need that right
Yeah.
now,
we
especially.
we want to inform people. I mean, we have environmental films, we have films on social, we call them social impact films, we have films about spirituality, we have films, all sorts of different kinds of films, documentaries, features, shorts, even music videos and podcasts. But the
Lovely.
idea is that you can watch a film about climate change without turning off the movie and feeling depressed and like, okay, I give up.
Right. Like, okay, there's nothing left for us to do. The world is blowing up and burning, and we
Right.
can't do anything to do it. You're
Let
focusing
me
on content that gives you some action tips and leaves you feeling motivated and inspired.
Yeah. And I just want to share this month, and like next week, we're doing a series called Bridging the Divide, which we're sharing some amazing films created about unity and about how to bring people together. And the next month, at the end of the month, we're doing a series of films on climate change. Again, we're focusing on solutions, not just the doom and gloom. So there's all the films that we're putting out there offer like positive, impactful ways in which you can take action and also leave you feeling hopeful.
Love it. I love it. So, like we said, this is the United Nations Make a Difference Day. And Project One Voice especially wanted to reach out to you as the mother of a young daughter and a young son. So I have a couple questions from the team here. And we
Okay.
wanted to kind of start off with, what does it mean to be a parent in this moment that we're living through?
Well, I have to say, I think being a parent is like one of the hardest things. No, it is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I don't even know that I'm not even finished yet, right? I don't think you ever finished parenting.
You're not finished.
And I'm a single mom.
You're not
And
finished in the house parenting yet. You've still got a long ways to
no,
go.
right. And I was thinking about this when the pandemic started. because this is an interesting year for me and my kids. I turned 50, my daughter turned 16, and my son turned 13. So this was going to be like our blowout year.
Teenagers in the house.
Yeah. And we canceled my daughter's Sweet 16, and I kind of had a okay 50th. My 50th was right at the beginning of it all. And I realized there was a time in which I could feel sorry for myself, and I could go, this is really ridiculous as a parent. Why do we have to go through this? But then I kind of looked back at like history, and I thought, there's always something going on.
Yes.
There's always something. And yeah, this is extraordinary for our generation and our kids' generation. This is a pretty big something going on. But I try to look at it as an opportunity to build resilience.
Yeah.
And to build strength of character. It's what else can we do? Right? Like, what else I look back at, like, the pandemic in the 1920s.
Yes.
I look back at like what people must have gone through, and what women and mothers are going through in other countries that are at war. Like, I don't, yes, we have to stay home. Yes, it's very scary, but you know what? At this moment, I'm not concerned that a bomb is going to be dropped on my house. So, I really look at it in terms of perspective with my kids.
Well, and it's still though under the frame, and that's kind of what Project OneVoice, we are approaching things with a trauma-informed approach, right? And so,
right.
No, this is not, there aren't bombs dropping, but we are going through, I think, and I want to see your opinion on it, a collective trauma of sorts. And so in your opinion, you're seeing in your daughter more of a resilience growing, and your son, because of this collective trauma we're all experiencing.
Well, I mean, they certainly went through, like, there are stages of grief, right? And there are stages of loss, and there are stages of anger, and and they've certainly gone through that.
Yeah.
But, as a parent, all I'm trying to do is hold space for them to be disappointed. Like, a lot of people would say, when my daughter was bummed about her 16th birthday, well, gee, at least you're not. And that's like the worst thing you could say to somebody, right? Like, you just completely diminish their experience of like, well, at least you're not this, or at least you're not that. When my daughter missed her 16th birthday, she was sad, and I just let her be sad, and I let her be mad about it. And I let her. So to me, that's part of what I'm doing. It's not that I'm saying, look, you're lucky there's no bombs, but I'm putting it into perspective for myself so that I can hold space for them to wake up in the morning and go, I'm stressed out about this, or this is giving me more anxiety, and to be present with them and hear them and go, okay, I understand that. I hear that. That makes it's totally legit that you are having, my kids they're actually considering putting my kids back in public school. Right.
Right.
So we're dealing with, that's what we're going through right now, like putting that into perspective and talking about our feelings about it. And that's all all I know how to do as a mom is just give them the space.
Well,
because I mean, there's no rule book.
Yeah, but I think that's important. Even
Leah, nobody wrote down how to handle this.
No, there is no rule book, Betsy. Like, so it's like, how do you do this? But I think what you just said is so important, because there are milestones that each and every one of us, from the youngest to the oldest, are missing. And there's no scale of your milestone is more important than my milestone, or that's selfish for you to mention that, you missed that vacation you had booked versus I missed a funeral. There's obviously but you can't put a level on somebody's milestone and how they're feeling, and you have to respect it in this moment. And I think that's something we're all really learning. And I really like that, if she wakes up and she's upset, we're going to listen, we're going to hear, we're going to acknowledge that, we're going to validate that. We're not going to say, oh, you're a moody teenager, go to your room,
And that's the hard part. Kids they're already moody teenagers. Let's just be real. They're already moody teenagers. And now they're dealing with this. And now they've been like ripped out of school and stuck online. And there's a lot of change happening.
Yeah.
So, for me as a parent, I'm just trying to be like, oh, well, yes, my son's frustrated. He says the other day that he always does better in school when it's in person. And his grades are dropping like this much. But to him, it's like that much, right?
Absolutely.
And I just sat with him and I just said to him, dude, I understand that. But let's just do the best that we can, because that's all that we can ever do. And so if that's what they can, I think I also hold space that everything is going to be okay. Like I have a
Yeah.
philosophy that it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, and what I've talked to my kids about is, like, I just voted with my daughter. She's
Yes.
16 and a half, so she can't vote yet. But she's very politically aware of what's going on,
I
as
know
she
she
should be.
is.
As
You know,
she,
and I've met your daughter. She came to the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Memorial, her and her friend. And I'll tell you, Betsy, that I almost canceled the whole thing. And when you called and said that Allura and her friend and you were on the way, that's when I put my shoes on. I was like,
oh,
I can't not show up
you
now.
know,
There's teenagers depending on this.
that's what they got to see. Like, that's what the kids have to see. They have to see, like, that I get frustrated, and I tell my kids, God, I'm having a really rough day today, or I'm sad, or I'm stressed. But they also observe, hopefully, they observe me working through it.
Yeah, that's a question I kind of had about that is how are you guiding her impression of this sudden lack of civil standards that are happening, this lack of leadership and responsibility? How are you guiding, your daughter and your son in this? Whatever
Well,
this is.
first of all, I don't know if I'm guiding them. I don't even know if I'm guiding them. I'm not trying. I'm not trying to guide them. First of all, they're 13 and 16. There's not a lot of like them wanting to hear from mom anymore. They love me sometimes, especially when they want to buy something. But but I'm just trying to live as an example of.
Yes.
So instead of trying to teach them anything, I'm just trying to show up. Like, I was saying my daughter is really politically active.
Yes.
I don't actually have a good answer for her as to why we have, this kind of civil discourse. Like, I look at her and go, and what I do say to her is, I said, this is, my philosophy of this is that as a civilization, we have a lot of rage. We have a lot of pent up anger and rage. And I say this about girls all the time coming into this world, because my daughter, she takes no shit from no one, and never ever has. She was born that way. And I think that, and I've told her this, and I've told my son this, listen, we're born with some of these characteristics because we're going through what we're doing now because you're next. And you've got to have the strength and the courage and the conviction to make some tough changes. And that's why you're so passionate about these things, because you've got to be ready to take it on.
Yes.
If you look at the history of civilization, every 50 to 100 years, we go through a great transformation. We do this every 50 to 100 years. Civilization does this. We're in one.
Yeah.
And so if we can ground in the knowing that, look, we've got work to do, everything is going to be okay, but we've got to stay focused on our work, we'll get there.
And we have the tools to do it, right? So like you're saying is your son and daughter, they were born with the tools needed for this exact moment. And we have to trust that, and trust that we're going to also connect with all the other people we were meant to connect with to move through this. Yeah.
I would say this funny story. So, like, my daughter obviously is not a Trump supporter.
Yes.
And I'm saying that politely. And she'll see a Trump sign and she'll want to leap out of the car and like and so I am teaching her things like, look, that's not going to do anything. Yes, you're mad. Yes, you don't like that person, but let's what action can you be taking that will have impact versus just the expression of rage in the moment. I said that's what a lot of people are doing. They're just expressing rage in the moment and there's no impact. So, I do try to help her, especially, my son is kind of in his 13. He could care less as long as there's a video game involved, he's fine. Otherwise, whatever. But for her, she's really passionate. So just trying to teach her how to channel her anger about what's going on into impactful communication.
Well, and I think that's important because not only are you turning, let's say this collective trauma that's happening out there with the pandemic or with, what's going on in politics and the president, And I know you said you're not necessarily trying to guide her, but that to me resonates that you are turning these moments into growth and learning experiences, right? Because
Yeah.
that's not every parent is doing that out there, Betsy. So I want to acknowledge that, okay? I want to
Thank you.
acknowledge that.
I mean, like for her, thank you. I mean, I think for her, like using the way she uses her social media as much as she can, and how she communicates her feelings. And they're 16, they're also developmentally, like, I don't expect my 16-year-old to have the same grace and skill level in communication as you and I. But I'm often
Right.
shocked that she has better than we do.
Yes, but you're also giving her the option and that window of this is another response. Rage and anger is certainly justifiable. But you're also giving her that option of, okay, and now what? Now what do we do with that? And that, I think, is the really important piece that many of us were not taught growing up. You know, maybe
Right.
it's okay to express your emotions. Maybe you grew up in a household where it wasn't even okay to express your emotions. Maybe you were allowed to express your emotions, but I don't know that many households have been in the past then, okay, express your emotion, and now how do we move through that and where do we go? And that's,
Right.
I feel like that's your own trauma work that you're just innately doing, you know, in your household.
Hopefully, I mean, I think that it's just important for them to realize that like for my daughter, it's like, yeah, be angry and then do something about it, because just being angry and posting something on Facebook or shouting out the window or flipping the bird, whatever you want to do, like that feels good in the moment, but it doesn't create solutions. And she's learning that. I mean, I hope that our kids walk away from this experience better. Like, first of all, the coolest thing about voting with my daughter was sitting down with her and saying, okay, so we did the first page for president, but guess what? There are 8 other pages on this ballot that you need to pay
Yes.
attention to, because
Yeah.
and that was, they don't really teach that much in school.
They don't teach that in college. They don't, you kind of learn that on your own somewhere. I think I learned that on my own somewhere in the last 6 or 7 years that I should be paying attention to the other pages.
And I taught her how to, like, not what to vote for, but there's propositions and judges and school board people, and I'm like, okay, she's like, do you know all these people? I'm like, nope. And so I taught her how to look them up on the internet. I taught her how to read about what they're saying, and I had her read a paragraph, and I said, well, what do you think about what that person said? Is that the kind of person you want running the school board, or do you want this person running? Because, and I said to her, because these people, some of them have aspirations to be president, and they're starting here.
Right.
So this is where it matters.
Yes.
And so I'm hopeful that more parents are doing that with their kids this year, because that's and I hope that one of the things that comes out is kids start really paying attention, like, we better pay attention to who we're voting for if we don't want that to happen again.
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. I have a question from the team. It's a little deeper here. If you're comfortable with this, what's one thing that you think you would want to say to your daughter right now, but you don't think she's old enough to hear it? Is there anything like that you can think of?
No, I mean, it's not, I don't think there's anything that, first of all, my daughter's 16 and a half. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. 16 and a half year olds today
Are
like 25-year-olds, right? Are like, I mean, these kids are smart. Okay. And they're our 16 and a half was way different than their 16 and a half. Very different. So it might not be that I wouldn't say something. It might be the how I deliver it. So it really isn't a question of, and I've always been really honest with my kids about life, about death, about money. I think it's really important to tell your kids the truth, and to be honest with them. And it just matters, like, okay, maybe I would probably say something to my 5-year-old different than to my 16 and a half year old.
Right.
But, it's important that you know this, I took my
Yeah.
kids to South America for 6 months, and we just roamed and lived in South America
Yeah.
because my kids, are two little white kids, in nice parts of the valley. That's where they've lived most of their life, right? So I wanted them to get some context in their
Yes.
life about what they have and what their life is like versus other things. And it wasn't all rainbows and moonbeams and nice hotels.
Right.
It was,
Right.
I wanted them to have context, but I took them in a way that wasn't like, now you have to feel guilty of all your privilege and now you
Right.
have to feel shame for it. So it's just a context. How are you going to communicate whatever you need to communicate to these kids? It's the how, not the what, in my opinion.
And I think you also do that, like you were just explaining, with your actions, right? So you do, it's not just the context in your words, but it's the context in your actions. And I've witnessed this from you over the years, because you just reminded me of election night 4 years ago. And I remember looking around the room of people that I was with, and there was at least 5 or 6 different races represented. There was at least 2 or 3 different sexual orientations represented, at least 2 or 3 different religions represented. And it dawned on me that where I grew up, in the communities that I grew up in, and those that are still living in those communities may not even know people that look, live, pray opposite than their own little community. And I think as children, sometimes growing up, we don't necessarily realize there are other ways to pray, other ways to live, other ways to love. And I really, again, I'm just want to acknowledge you for that again, because I feel like that's something that you really bring into both of their lives. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, and it's funny, like, uh, my daughter specifically, because she's more, vocal and older, I always giggle when adults talk about gender identity and how do we explain gender identity. If you ask the kids, they don't care. Like,
Yeah.
it's all us old people that are having struggle with it. They're like, call yourself a unicorn. Anyway, next. I mean, they don't, I mean, it's funny that I noticed that we tend to, as adults, try to put onto our children our own fears and worries, but they don't actually have them
Right.
until we start to tell them, well, you've got to start talking about gender. And they look at you like, no, that's your problem. We don't have that problem. And I see that in a lot of different, different issues, religion, money, um, so economics, like I'm noticing that young people, for the most part, don't have all these different separations that we grew up with. They just,
That's really interesting.
and they don't have that. And part of it might be, unless you're really in a bubble,
Yep.
for the most part, the United States, you can't, it's really hard to live in a community that doesn't have some sort of diversity. You have to work really hard to do that. And that doesn't mean that that doesn't exist. I'm just saying that, and maybe for me, I've always tried to live in communities that have diversity. But I think if, I've always joked, especially in the last 2 years, I think we should just give this to the kids, and just parents should just sit down, have a margarita, and say, rock on with your bad selves. And because they're smarter, they're way smarter than we are. They really are.
I am all for that. I am all for that. Betsy, I want to thank you for being here with us today. Project OneVoice is celebrating you, is celebrating United Nations Make a Difference Day. And
Thank you.
we especially wanted to spotlight you and all the good work you're doing. Will you also, just for anyone watching, let us know where we can find out more information about you, where we can find out about See Good TV? How do we find you?
Okay, for me, it's betsychasse.net, but for See Good TV, you just go to seegoodtv.com, or on your iPhone or Android or TV, just look in the App Store for See Good TV, and there will be. And right now, it's free to join.
If someone's watching that wants to submit something for you, we have a lot of filmmakers that are going to be watching these interviews.
Oh, yeah. So we also have a wonderful group called the Conscious Creators Network. which is the largest off-Facebook network of filmmakers interested in making impactful conscious media. And you can join the Creators Network. You just Google the Conscious Creators Network. That's the easiest way to find the link, because I don't.
It's a group offline. They can find it. They can join it for free, and through there they can be curated, possibly through See Good TV.
Yep, exactly. You got it.
We got it. Well, have a great day. Enjoy your day. Celebrate Make a Difference Day. I'm sure you will. And we thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.